April 1945. The Second World War in Europe is in its death rattle. The Western Allies have halted at the Elbe River, but for the Soviet Union, the war has one final, symbolic, and brutal objective: Berlin. This wasn't just a battle, it was an execution. Over 2.5 million Soviet soldiers of Marshal Zhukov's First Belarusian Front and Marshal Kohn's First Ukrainian Front massed on the Oder-Neisse line, just 40 miles from the city. The assault began on April 16 with the Battle of the Silo Heights. In a bid to shock and awe, Marshal Zhukov unleashed the most intense artillery bombardment of the war, over 1 million shells in the first day. He then lit the battlefield with 143 anti-aircraft searchlights, aimed at the German lines. But the tactic backfired. The German commander, General Heinrichi, had anticipated the attack and pulled his main force back, letting the barrage pound empty trenches. The searchlights, reflecting off the morning mist, ended up silhouetting the attacking Soviet infantry for the German machine gunners. What was meant to be a one-day breakthrough became a four-day meat grinder. The Soviets took horrific casualties, over 30,000 dead, but their sheer numbers were unstoppable. By April 19, the road to Berlin was open. The Red Army now moved with terrifying speed. Zhukov's and Kohn's forces bypassed the city to the north and south, linking up to the west of Berlin on April 25. The capital of the Reich was completely encircled. What followed was the Rattenkrieg, the Rat War. Soviet storm groups, supported by heavy tanks and artillery, advanced block by block, house by house. The fighting was savage, personal, and relentless. The German defenders, with no hope of reinforcement, fought with fanaticism. They used Panzerfausts from shattered windows and battled in the tunnels of the S-Bahn and U-Bahn, which were eventually flooded on Hitler's orders, drowning thousands of soldiers and civilians. The symbolic heart of the city was the Reichstag. For days, Soviet soldiers fought room to capture the parliament building. On April 30, two soldiers finally raised the red banner on its roof, a moment that would become the defining image of the war's end. On that very same day, less than a mile away, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. The fighting didn't stop. It took 2 more days for the city's remaining garrison, led by General Weidling, to finally ignore Hitler's last commands and surrender. On May 2, 1945, the guns in Berlin fell silent. The battle for Berlin was one of the deadliest of the war. In just over 2 weeks, more than 80,000 Soviet soldiers were killed. German military losses are estimated at over 100,000, and as many as 125,000 civilians perished. The 12-year reign was over. And just 6 days later, on May 8, Germany signed the unconditional surrender. The war in Europe was finally, and definitively, finished.